This year's season end took place in Czech, with the final World Cup events at Lipno and České Budějovice. The racecourse at Lipno is infamous. This is partially thanks to the 1992 World Champs, where 30 cubics of water were dumped down a course that normally handles less than half of that. But even with a sensible amount of water, the course is still big and steep. However, there's another reason for its infamy. The Riverwalter is easily the stinkiest river in Europe. At Lipno, the river releases out the bottom of the dam, bringing with it remnants of whatever is sat there decaying at the bottom of the reservoir for the past eternity. The smell this releases is not too dissimilar to the smell released by standing in knee-deep canal mud, except where canal mud smell dissipates within a second or two, in Lipno there is no escape, and the stomach-wrenching smell saturates the entire valley, encroaching on every breath until you can no longer remember a reality without it. Needless to say, Riverstench felt right at home. The last article I wrote on the previous World Cup centred around the difficulty of learning a new course within a short time span. Lipno took this to the extreme. Releases out of the Lipno Dam only occur at paddleable levels one weekend every year. This not only makes learning the course hard, but it also ensures this is very busy. Over this one weekend, the river played host to not only the Wildwater World Cups, but also the Czech Slalom Championships, the Devil Extreme Race, and the Rafting World Cups, which this time we'd sadly neglected to enter. There were 2 hours of water on Thursday, 4 hours of water on Friday, before racing on Saturday and Sunday. Fortunately, with Lipno being quite large, all of the rapids were very distinctive, meaning it only took a few laps to get to grips with at least the rough lines. Although, again, headcounts were valuable for cleaning these up a bit. One quirk of the course is that before the finish there are 2 long flat lakes you have to rag over before the final biggest rapid of the river pops up to sucker punch you just before you finish. This caught out Alex the previous time we'd raced here in 2018, leading to a lovely swim across the line. Getting the balance right between pulling hard across the lakes, but not so hard you piss it in at the end, was clearly going to be a challenge. But for the Serbian teams, this would come with an extra complication. They'd been unable to make the Thursday and Friday practice sessions, and in the morning of the first race, the final rapid had been closed off for the Rafting World Cups. This meant that they'd have to run the final rapid blind for the first time in the race. Fortunately, one of the Serbs came up with a cunning plan. He'd ease up over the lakes, allowing Alex, who started 30 seconds behind him, to catch up. Then Alex could show him down the final rapid, avoiding any catastrophes. Unfortunately, what the Serb hadn't planned on is Alex pissing it in again, which led to one of the team's favourite photos in recent history. Alex wasn't the only one to have issues though, with Rob also making a similar mistake. For my part, I made a mess of the bottom going right through the meat of everything, losing a lot of time, but fortunately not losing my boat. Up until this point, Czech had been an intolerably hot 30 degrees, but after the first day of racing, the clouds gathered so thick that the sun seemed to set early. The wind started picking up, threatening the marquees and attempting to steal our drying thermals, and then the torrential rain came. Over 2 centimetres within 2 hours transformed the campsite into a myriad of small lakes and rivers. We watched on from the van, trying to make backup plans for when we'd discover all of our tents had been drowned. Miraculously, everything mostly survived, although any hope of dry canoeing kit was gone. Some of the French girls were even kind enough to come and check on us. By the sounds of things, they'd had an even tougher time, as they were completely soaked and had no clothes left. But Alex sent them away, as he was already warm and dry, curled up inside his sleeping bag. The format of the World Cups was a tad odd, with Lipno hosting 2 classic races back-to-back on the same course, and České Budějovice hosting 2 sprints back-to-back on the same course. So, having done all the racing on Saturday at Lipno, on Sunday, we'd do it all again. This presented a good opportunity to take the mistakes from the first race and apply them to the second. In a rare moment of forethought, I filmed my first race run, which I then went over with Nicky later that evening. It turned out to be time well spent, as, despite the lower levels, I managed to shave a few seconds off my time. Alex too made good use of the second day, finally finishing a race run at Lipno. After 2 solid days of racing, the Czechs had organised a little party to celebrate the end of World Cups 3 and 4. If there's one thing that the Czechs do better than paddling, it's partying, and the highlight of this party was definitely the Alpine Luge. An Alpine Luge is basically a metal halfpipe that winds down the mountain. You navigate this sat upon a glorified kitchen tray on wheels with a single lever that operates some brakes. This was almost too much fun, particularly after a couple of beers, but what really transformed the experience was a speed trap at the end. Surprisingly, if you allow a bunch of athletes to record their top speed, things instantly turn into a competition. With this being my primary motivation, I decided that the brake was likely redundant. My reasoning for this being that nobody would design such a contraption where my safety was wholly dependent upon my own competence, and even if they did, they'd probably be reluctant to allow me on it after a few pints. What I'd failed to account for is that this wasn't Disneyland. A fact that became all too apparent as I hit the top lip of the banked corner and continued on down the pipe sans sledge. You'll be relieved to know I survived the ordeal, despite leaving some skid marks on my ego down the track. The following morning, we departed a grey and drizzly Lipno to arrive in an equally grey and drizzly České. Earlier in the trip, we'd been cunningly abbreviating this to České, but this caused some confusion from the Czechs, who later informed us that České more or less translates to town or city in the context of a place name, and what we were saying was more or less gibberish. Still, České had a decathlon, and the decathlon had new, but more importantly, dry shoes and towels we could buy having failed to dry nearly everything. České, to choose its proper name, was to host the next 2 World Cup races. Both would be sprints, and both would be on the artificial white watercourse just outside of town. While the water outside of Budějovice was a lot less smelly, it is renowned for being rougher in the belly, and the Czechs had kindly warned us about this by lobbing bog rolls at our heads during the opening ceremony. Little did they know, we train on the Trent, and thanks to the lacklustre performance of British water companies, we're well used to swallowing sewage. Still, we ended up following a near-religious regiment of hand-washing and stomach-washing with copious amounts of coke to a moderate level of success. The white watercourse itself was much like a compressed version of our local Nottingham white watercourse, a little steeper, a little tighter, and a little swirlier. For someone who tends to lean more towards the classics, I'd never spent too much time focusing on trying to tighten up a sprint run. But having the 2 Sprint World Cups presented the opportunity to target this neglected area of my skill set. Unfortunately, it highlighted some deficiencies in my repertoire, and after a few frustrating practices, Nicky, our coach, settled on a new mantra to rectify these issues. Long, strong, and straight, which I think was mostly in relation to my paddling. Sadly, my race runs over the next 2 days were a little disappointed. A marked improvement from how I was paddling upon my arrival to České, but a few small mistakes and one large spin out meant that they still didn't quite live up to their full potential. Still, over the 2 days, the rest of the team put in some strong performances, with Freddie winning the Czech Cup race and Phil putting down one of his best ever sprint runs. To close things off, there was of course more partying, this time featuring a mosh pit and the local Czech ska punk band. Overall, the World Cups provided a lovely closeout to the 2023 season. Lipno is now one of my favourite paddling destinations, and I hope we'll be returning there soon. Meanwhile, the lessons I learned at České will hopefully form a solid foundation for my 2024. Now, all that's left to do is enjoy all of the regional and national races in the UK over the winter.